Thank you for attending our webinar today, Getting Compliant and Saving Money with Express Software Manager. My name is Jeff Kelsey. I'm Vice President of Products at Expressmetrics. Before we get started, a few housekeeping items. We are recording this session, and we will email you the link to the recording. During the webinar, if you have questions, please submit those questions via the GoToMeeting question window, and we'll compile those questions and answer as many as time allows at the end of the session. The presentation today will last no longer than 45 minutes. That's it for the housekeeping items. The goal of our webinar today is to show you how you can be compliant and reduce spending by using Express Software Manager 10.2. I'd like to start by giving you some information about Expressmetrics, talk about some key software asset management drivers, give you an overview of the features and functionality of Express Software Manager, talk about our involvement in the IT asset management industry, and then we'll do a product demonstration, and we'll have questions and answers at the end. Expressmetrics is based in Seattle, Washington. For the past 14 years, we've been focused exclusively on IT asset management. We definitely focus on the software side as well as the hardware. During that time period, we've deployed our product to over 5,000 companies worldwide. We believe that when you buy our product, you're not just buying our product. You are doing business with us as a company. And one of the things that's very important to us is that we provide our customers with world-class support from all our organizations, our sales organization, our support organizations, development organizations as well. Our primary teams are located in the United States, including our support teams, our development teams, our sales and marketing teams as well. When you call us, we're going to pick up the phone and answer it, and most often the person that picks up that phone is going to take your problem from beginning to end. And you can certainly look on our website, and you'll see there's lots of testimonials about the type of service that we provide for our customers, and it really extends beyond the typical expectations of the software industry. You're probably attending this webinar for several reasons. One is you may be laying awake at night worried about whether you're going to be audited. And the audits continue to rise. The larger the company you are, the greater at risk you are. The most notorious auditors are IBM, Adobe, Microsoft. And the complexity of licensing isn't getting any easier. It's getting more complex. There's different models. There's virtualization. And as a result, as a person responsible for assets, one of the concerns you may have is whether or not you can survive an audit if somebody walks in your door today. So a lot of people lose sleep over this, and for good reason. They want to be prepared in case an audit comes. After people feel like they have a handle on compliance, especially for their major vendors, the next thing that people start asking is, why are we spending so much money on software? And how can I reduce IT spending? How can I reduce software spending in my environment? And one of the key things that you can do is to collect usage information about applications in your environment. Are applications being used? More importantly, can you identify software that's not being used in your environment? If you can identify software that's not being used in your environment, it can allow you to do several things. One, it may allow you to reallocate licenses depending on your product use rights. I've got 100 licenses. Somebody wants to buy 100 more, but we're not even using the 100 we currently have. Let's reallocate those licenses to make use of those. You certainly don't need to buy more licenses if you're not using the ones that you have. You don't need to pay maintenance for software that you're not using. And I would challenge you to ask yourself today, if you can actually answer this question honestly, are you maintaining any software in your environment that's not being used? Typically, if you're not collecting usage data, you are. You no longer need to concern yourself with patching, testing, imaging, any of these applications that aren't being used. And what I mean by that is an IT has an infrastructure, and they have applications that are part of that infrastructure, and all of that costs money. You have to support that infrastructure. And if you can reduce that, then you have an opportunity to shrink your entire IT budget. And that's a significant cost. A lot of times people associate tracking unused software just with the fact that I can reallocate licenses. But the larger cost is the fact that you no longer need to deploy it, patch it, manage it, worry about security from that aspect. Express Software Manager is our flagship product, and we can help you with these things. We can provide visibility and control over your IT assets. We do that by collecting software and hardware inventory, collecting software usage data, when an application starts, when it stops, how long it's been running, how many times it's run in the last 6 months. That type of information can help you with reducing spending. We also have an IT purchase tracking system that allows you to track purchasing. So when you actually buy something, and we'll spend more time talking about that a little bit later. And we also have a unique feature called application control. It allows you to deny access to applications in your environment. That can be used for concurrent licensing, where I own 100 and I don't want the 101st person to be able to run it because I don't have 101 licenses. Or you can control any app. You might want to restrict access to an important financial application so you can have a profile that says only these 2 people can access that application. The technology that we provide is primarily there to answer the business questions you need to answer. The first 2 things that I talked about, compliance and reducing software spending, are probably the top 2 on the list and why people come to us. But there's other things that you can do with our product, including determining whether software should be upgraded or retired, or hardware upgraded or retired, tracking your maintenance, and when maintenance is coming due. Those types of things are also within our product. We offer our product in 3 editions. The product we're talking about today, Express Software Manager, is listed on the left. We've already talked about the features of that product. When we implement it, we use our client, the Express client. We can install it in a Windows and Mac environment, and it's licensed per seat or per machine. In the middle of this diagram, Express Software Manager for SCCM is a product that we have that has the Express connector. And the Express connector connects to an SCCM database and utilizes the data already collected with SCCM. In that case, we're using the SCCM information collected by the SCCM client. We support Windows, and it's licensed per seat or per machine. The far column to the right, Express Software Manager for Citrix, is a product designed to run in a Citrix server or Citrix farm environment. And our client is installed on the Citrix servers, and it enables you to track usage back to the end node or user that's actually using that application. So we'll associate the usage data back to the device and the user, and also to the Citrix server. And it will help you maintain compliance in that environment. That product is licensed per user. So what makes us different from other people out there in the environment today? For one, we integrate inventory, usage, and purchasing data. And that may not sound unique, but in some instances there are implementations of products out there that will collect usage data, for example, and they associate it to an executable, but they don't associate it to the actual application. For example, if you launch Excel.exe and you associate the usage to Excel.exe, that's not going to help you if you don't know if it was run as part of Office 2010 Professional Plus or Office 2010 Standard, for example. So we're going to take that data, we're going to reconcile that data, we're going to map it from an inventory, usage, and purchasing data. One of the reasons we can do that is because of the way we identify software. We have a catalog called the Express Software Identification Database, which has existed since pre-Y2K. And the reason that catalog exists is historically there's really never been a standard for how to identify software installed on a workstation or server. About 3 years ago, or almost 4 years ago now, ISO 19770-2 was put in place to do that, but it hasn't been widely adopted. And as a result, what we use this catalog for is comparing what we collect from a workstation or a server to what's in the catalog. The catalog is updated on a monthly basis. We add hundreds, if not sometimes thousands, of new applications a month, and it automatically updates your implementation in your environment. The other thing about our product is it's easy to deploy and use. You're not going to need a team of people to deploy our product or to manage our product. Even in large environments, you might have a couple of people, or you can have a lot of people if you want, because it's easy to use, and you don't have to do a lot of training to allow people to access the data within our product. And as I mentioned before, we have application control. I described that. That's for concurrent and allows you to set up policies as well. I also mentioned before IT purchase tracking system. The original design of this tracking system was customers were contacting us telling us, boy, we really want to track our purchasing data in your system so that we can reconcile what we've purchased with what you're discovering from an inventory or a usage perspective. And today we have purchasing data in enterprise purchasing system, but it isn't in enough detail that makes sense for us. So we have our own database, or we have an Excel spreadsheet, or we're tracking it in file cabinet drawers. And ultimately, customers wanted us to take care of that. So we allow you to enter or import purchasing details into our purchase tracking system, and then we'll automatically reconcile what you've purchased with what we're discovering in the environment, either from a usage or an inventory perspective. And then we allow you to take those assets and associate them to users and organizations. And I'll actually walk through the process of doing that today. All of the data that we collect, all the data that you input into our system, isn't going to be useful to you if you can't easily report on it. Oftentimes, people are looking at products that do a variety of things, a whole, deployment and all of that. And what happens is the focus on asset management isn't there from a reporting perspective. So our whole focus, our whole goal is to give you intuitive web-based reporting that allows you to filter and get exactly the information you're looking for. And again, we'll demonstrate that today. I mentioned earlier that we've been involved in this industry for around 14 years. During that time period, we've won various awards and certifications from a variety of companies. We're a Microsoft certified partner. We're a Microsoft System Center Alliance partner. We've been involved with the Microsoft SAM program. We've been involved with many of the ISO standards revolving around IT asset and software asset management. We are a Citrix Ready product. We're involved with all the associations that are concerned with compliance, including the BSA, the SIA, and FAST in the UK. In addition, I mentioned one of our differentiators was software identification. Our catalog is actually licensed by some other worldwide software companies, IBM, BMC, ASG. They're all using our software recognition technology to help them do a better job of recognizing software in their implementations. So we are probably considered one of the world leaders in software recognition, and that's why some of these organizations are coming to us for that technology. So now that we've talked in general about the company and our product and the market, let's talk a little bit about technology, product architecture specifically. We'll start with that. I mentioned there's 3 editions. In the upper left, Express Software Manager, the product that I'm going to demonstrate to you today, uses our client. Our client's an MSI package. That MSI package can get deployed using any deployment type technology that you want to use. We can also deploy it from our own administrative console, so if you want to do it through us, you can. You could use group policy, login scripts, a variety of methodologies. Once that client's deployed, it's going to collect data, usage data, software inventory, hardware inventory data, and it's going to format it as XML. And it's going to transmit it using HTTP or HTTPS up to a web service running on Microsoft IIS server. The IIS server isn't represented in this architecture slide, but it sits either on the SQL Server, Microsoft SQL Server, or it can sit on a separate server as well. A lot of this will depend more on your infrastructure and how you want to implement it than our requirements. You'll see once the data hits that service, then it goes into the Express database, which is on a Microsoft SQL Server. And again, that SQL Server could be an existing SQL Server. It could be a virtualized SQL Server. It could be an independent SQL Server. A lot of that's up to how you want to implement it. Once that data goes in, then it gets rationalized, recognized, and then we pull it out using Express Purchasing to view it and also input data out of the reports console. And again, those are going through web services running on the same IIS server. And then the Express Administrative Console allows you to manage the product. In the middle of the upper diagram, you'll see Express Software Manager for SCCM. The only difference there is we're not using our client. We're using a connector to pull data out of SCCM. And then on the far right, Express Software Manager for Citrix uses our client. It works identical to the flagship product. So from a client perspective or a collection perspective, that's where things are different. But everything in the gray box is identical in all versions of the product. So now that we've talked about the architecture and the product a little bit, what I want to do is move into the demo. and I need to just jump in and refresh my screen real quick for you before we start this. All right, here we go. So what you're viewing on the screen is the Express Reports console. Now, from a data perspective, typically you buy things and you put them into the system and then you deploy them and then you inventory them and then you'd report on them. But I'm starting with reporting because the most important part for people is being able to extract data to be able to make good business decisions about the data that you're collecting or inputting into the system. So today what I'd like to do is show you reports first, and I'm going to show you how the console works so you have an understanding of how the console works. It's pretty simple. And then we'll take a look at some data. You will notice some data on the screen right now on the status page. These are charts. There are hardware charts, software charts, purchasing charts, usage charts. You can notice there's an Am I Compliant chart visible, an Office installation chart. So there's a variety of charts, and you can choose which charts you want to have displayed. You didn't see me log into the system, but I logged in as a specific user. And once I do that, I have my own specific view. These charts can be moved around. I can click on an element of the chart, and it will drill me into specific data. And I will come back shortly and show you how that works. The Reports tab lists all the reports that are available in the product put into common categories. There are tabular reports that aren't graphical. So these are put into, software. You can see I have software usage expanded. There's a software inventory folder, and all of these are reports. There's a lot of reports in the product. I'm going to show you a sampling of a few today. The Filters tab is really the brains of the Reports console. This is what enables you to decide what data you're going to view. Basically, you create a filter and you apply it to a report. On the left are filter properties. I'll walk through a few of these, but not all. You'll notice that I have manufacturers selected, for example. Maybe I'm concerned about Adobe. I can choose Include, and I can choose Adobe Systems Incorporated. And now when I run a report, only software that's from Adobe is going to be displayed. I should point out that under manufacturer name, you're only going to see Adobe listed once. We're going to normalize that so you don't have Adobe listed multiple times within the product. And that's the goal, is to normalize this data so that it makes sense. We can also filter based on categories. All the software we identify is categorized based on a United Nations product code standard, which would allow you to do something like run a report on all the computer games or entertainment software in your environment, or maybe run a report that shows all the development software installed in your environment. You can also get very granular, and you could include a filter that only is going to include Adobe Acrobat Professional. Maybe somebody walks up to you and says, I want to buy 500 copies of Adobe Acrobat Professional. And what you want to know is, well, wait a second, what do we own today, what's installed today, and how many of those are being used? So if I applied this filter, I could run a report to display that data. I can filter on license types, metering, price. I can also filter based on our structure from a machine perspective. Based on our Active Directory structure, I can choose what groups I want to include when I run a report. Maybe I only want to see the machines that are part of the support organization. I can also create a user-defined group structure. Sometimes Active Directory isn't aligned to how I want to do my asset management. So I can create my own group structure, put machines in that group structure, and report on it. You can see I've got Seattle, Seattle South, Texas, and a variety of different groups that I've created over time. I can get very granular and only report on an individual machine. I can also build a query. We have a simple query builder that allows you to build simple or complex queries, and I'll come back and show you an example a little bit later. And then I can filter on user groups, assets, path, duration, and dates. As I create a filter, I will save it and give it a name, and I will either share it with others or I'll keep it as a private filter. In my case, I'm going to discard the changes because I don't want to change the current filter. So that's important. And then once I have that filter, you'll see how during the demo I'll apply different filters to show you data. Preference just has to do with time zone. The administration tab is only visible if you're an administrator of the product and allows you to turn determine who has access to reports. So I'm going to jump back to the dashboard, and we're going to take a look at some data. And I'm going to start with the Am I Compliant chart in the upper left. Now, the database that we're looking at today is a demo database, and it has real users that report, or real machines that report into this database, but I haven't spent a lot of time entering purchasing data. And as a result, it's telling me I have 434 applications that are not compliant. If I click on that piece of the pie, it will drill me into a detailed report about all of those applications. And I'm going to actually navigate to page 8. And I'm going to look about 2/3 down the page. You'll notice Microsoft Office Enterprise 2007. So I'm going to use that as the example to start with today. And you'll notice that the third column over says 5. And that represents how many licenses I'm entitled to or I've purchased. And that comes from our purchasing interface. And I'll show you later how that data gets into the system. We're comparing it to what's installed. There are 8 installed, and as a result, we have a deficit of 3. We're taking the last unit cost and calculating a license deficit cost. If I click on Office Enterprise 2007, it will drill me into more information about that specific application. I own 5, 8 machines have it installed, 7 machines are actually using it. And I want to point out that that's based on this filter setting down below. So I'm looking from January 24, 2013 to the current 7/24, July 24th. Now, if I come down and look on the detail or the activity, you'll see all the machines that currently have it installed. They have a check mark next to them. And then under Account, it tells how many times each of those machines have actually launched it. And I can expand the plus sign, and these are the machines that are actually using it, and I can tell because there's a begin and an end time. If there's only a begin time, that means that we haven't recorded the close time or it hasn't happened yet. And we'll report on total time and idle time as well. Idle time means it's running, but it's not in focus being used by the user. So that was one way of looking at a suite. But you also could come down here and look at Microsoft Office installations and see how my suites are distributed. We could click on Office 2007-8 again. I'm sorry, Office Enterprise 2007 again, and we'll notice we've got the same summary data up above. You might notice that the used is different, and that's because we're only looking at a month worth of data in this case. So it changed. 6 months and months will change the type of data that you're looking at. But what's really important about this report is the fact that we just don't report on suites or we don't report on components. We report on them collectively. So you know that these applications are part of this suite, and we can also tell how many times you installed and launched these applications. So what's really interesting about this set is this is Office Enterprise 2007. If we go over to the used or unused column, and ask yourself, how many times have people actually used Access, InfoPath, Groove, and Publisher? They haven't used them at all. So then you start asking the question, well, why are they using this version of the suite? So this is the type of data that can help you make better decisions when you're negotiating with Microsoft moving forward. Maybe you don't need Enterprise moving forward, or maybe you don't need Enterprise for your entire enterprise. Maybe you could get away with standard for 50% of your users. So that type of data is available. So we started talking a little bit about usage related to the components being used. The other thing that I mentioned earlier is the value in being able to identify applications that aren't being used. And what I've done is I've loaded a filter called Unused, and my Unused filter just shows some applications that customers typically tell us are underutilized in their environment. Most often, Adobe and Microsoft apps. Adobe Acrobat Professional, the Adobe CS Suites, the Microsoft Projects, and the Microsoft Visios of the world. So this report, what it's doing is showing us similar data, what I purchased, what's installed. The key column is the unused column. It represents how many computers have it installed but haven't used it. And if I open up one of these, I can actually see the 2 computers that aren't using this software. I can also calculate based on the unit cost the potential unused value as well. So we can look at project, and both of these don't have a lot. We can look at Sales Logics, which for us, there's a lot there, and it's a very expensive app. So again, this will help you identify those apps that aren't being used and the machines that they're installed on. Some of these apps are being used. So one of the things we can do is we can flip this around, and let's take a look at the actual usage of these applications. So we know Adobe Acrobat Professional has 4 installations, and 2 machines aren't using it, but 2 are. And we can see the usage patterns, including the use time, idle time. It's idle 36.6% of the time. If we look at that Sales Logics client down below, you can see it's installed 8 times, only being used once, and it's idle 91.3% of the time. If I want to get more detail, I can click on an activity log, and it will show me when that app was launched, when it was stopped, what version, what user, what machine it's on. So you get that detailed information to help you make better decisions about what to do about the data you're actually viewing. So I'm going to jump back to the operating system chart in the upper right. So you'll notice there's a variety of operating systems here. I'm going to click on Windows 7 Professional, where I have 6 installations. And this will take me into what we call as an analysis grid, because it'll let you manipulate the data. You can change the columns that are displayed. You can filter, you can sort this, you can group this. You can see we're displaying the machine name and a variety of hardware values out to the right. Let's do a grouping. We'll add a grouping by RAM. And now all these machines will be grouped by the amount of RAM that they have installed. Anywhere in this list where you see a machine name, you can click on it, and it will drill you into a detailed report about that computer. Now, one of the things I forgot to do is to set my filter back to a default filter. And so I want to do that, and I'm going to actually reload this report because I want to show you the entire report. And that filter was actually limiting what applications would be displayed. Now, the top part of this report is actually going to show you all the hardware that we collect by default on this computer. So we're getting the domain and machine name at the top. We're collecting processor, CPU, RAM, memory slots, slots in use, manufacturer model. You can see it's a Dell Optiplex 7010. There's this Dell serial number in the upper right. Disk drive summary, network adapter summary. And then we also allow you to customize our client. You can collect additional values from WMI or out of the registry, or you can import data about this machine. So for example, I'm collecting all the services that are running on this computer. If we scroll down, I'm actually collecting all the hotfixes that are installed and a variety of other data. And then at the bottom, you're going to show all the software that's installed on this computer. Anything in red hasn't been launched in the last 30 days. So you have visibility into that here as well. So a very granular report. The other thing that customers often want to report on are changes that occur in the environment. So maybe I roll out 500 computers to a new organization, and I have an image that I put on those. Everything's working great, and then 6 months later I start getting phone calls from that organization. We can report on changes based on software or hardware. So in this case, what I'm doing is comparing from September of 2012 to April of 2013. So we allow you to set up baselines so you can compare. And from a software perspective, I can see that Adobe Acrobat Professional went from 3 installs to 4, and I can expand it out, and I can actually see what machine installed that software. So you have the ability to see the changes both from adds and removes that occur from a software perspective. From a hardware perspective, I can get a view of all the attributes that have changed. So if we go look at RAM, there's 2 machines where the RAM changed from 2 gigabytes to 4 gigabytes. And I can click on a specific machine, and what it's going to show me are all the changes that occurred on this machine. Now, the reason there's so many changes on this machine is we actually went from XP Professional to Windows 7 Enterprise, and a lot of the hardware values look a little bit differently from a hardware perspective. But the OS changed, the OS version changed, and if we come down below, we can see all the software that was installed and removed from that computer between that time frame. The last thing that I'll show you from a reporting perspective, as I mentioned earlier, the ability to query. and we have a query builder. And you can do simple things or more difficult things. In this case, let's do something fairly simple. We'll look at all the machines that have Windows XP Professional installed. So I'll add that statement. And what I want to do is find all the computers in our environment that have XP installed and have less than 2 gigabytes of RAM. Whoops, that's proxy server. Let's choose RAM. So I'm going to say less than 2 gigabytes of RAM. And I'll add that statement. And then once I do that, I can run a report. I'm going to run a custom hardware inventory report. And what this report will do is allow me to view the machines that meet that criteria. So in our environment, if a machine is running XP and has less than 2 gigabytes of RAM, it's headed for retirement. If it had more than 2 gigabytes of RAM, we might consider upgrading, and we might look at other criteria. In this case, we come back with a list of machines. There is RAM on the far right showing that it's less than 2 gigabytes. I also collected service pack, operating system. You can see they're all XP. I should mention that I haven't before that the second machine down is actually a virtual machine installed on VMware. So we do allow you to install our client both on physical and virtual. We will get information about the virtual, know that it's a virtual machine. But otherwise, we're going to collect all the same additional information. So we'll collect additional virtual attributes, but we're also going to collect the software inventory, hardware inventory, just like we would for any other machine. So I'm hoping that's giving you some examples of how our reporting works. There are a lot more reports that you can certainly view within the product. But what I'd like to do now is migrate to the purchasing interface. And again, remember, purchasing is here so you can reconcile what you've bought to what's installed in your environment. But we will report on things like monthly purchases and summarize your purchases by vendor and manufacturer, and you can see that on the status page here. In order to best show you how data reconciles, I'm going to add some data manually. There are 3 ways to get data into the system. You can import it through an Excel spreadsheet. We do have an API that other systems can call to put or get data, and then you can manually enter it. So in this case, what I'm going to do is choose to add a purchase. I could have chosen lease. They're a little bit different because lease has some expiration dates. And I'm going to type in a bogus order number here. And then I'm going to choose an access. Access profiles allow you to segment data. And I'm not going to go into a lot more detail about that, but it basically allows you to have a purchasing person in sales and allow them to only see their sales purchasing data and nobody else's. So let's add a description. Let's go computer and software for sales. And we're going to put in a total price of $3,000, and it's from Dell. We can add notes. We can upload documents into our database, an order document, a quote document, a product use right document. Any document you want to put into the product, you can do that and store it. You can also create custom fields in the upper right. It says this is a custom field. You can have string, numeric, date, currency fields. You also can have list box fields. So I have a CC for cost center, and it's a required field. I know that because it has an asterisk next to it. And as I enter my order, there's really multiple levels to the order. And this is the general information about the order. I'm going to go ahead and save that. And now I'm going to add the detail. We call those line items. I mentioned I'm going to buy some hardware. And let's imagine we're buying an Optiplex. Let's buy another 7010. And we'll say from Dell. And it's a computer that our client can be installed on and managed. However, if I choose other assets, I can track anything I want in this purchasing interface. So we have customers that track their computers and software in here, but they also track desks, phones, anything else that they might want to track in the system. So in this case, I'm going to choose computer and quantity of 1, and I'm going to choose a unit price of $2,500, and we're going to say it's ordered. The status is configurable, but I'm going to choose ordered. Notes, I can add custom fields here, and I can save this. However, before I do that, I want to add maintenance. So I want to actually put in the warranty information for Dell in here, and I can either select it or I'm choosing to type it at this time. So I'm putting a 3-year period for the warranty. I can put a service description, contract number, notes, and I can also put custom fields here as well. Let's save this. And I want to point out several things. One, I typed in Dell. It says Dell Computer Corporation in all cases. We have a methodology that allows you to normalize the manufacturer so you don't end up with Dell represented 12 different ways. I also want to mention that there are 2 line items, one for the computer, one for the hardware maintenance. There's also a renew button next to the hardware maintenance, so when it comes due, you'll be reminded and you can come in and renew it. And then in the far right is an Assign tab. Now, I'm going to click on Assign, and I'm going to choose, this isn't required, but I'm going to choose to assign this. And I'm going to actually search for me in Active Directory. There's my user account. And part of the sales, or let's say I'm part of the sales organization. And I could go ahead and save this. Now, before I do, I want to talk about serial number. I mentioned earlier, several times as a matter of fact, that one of the goals of purchasing was to reconcile with assets in your environment. The way we do that with hardware is by the serial number. So I don't have a serial number because I'm just ordering this. But when I receive the order, I'll get the serial number. I'll come in. I'll update the order. I'll update the status. I'll put the serial number in. And it may go sit in our warehouse for a week, and then it gets deployed in the environment, and our client gets deployed, and our client does an inventory, and our client collects the serial number. And it comes back, looks in the purchasing system for a matching serial number, and automatically reconciles those. So you now know that order number 1234 is ordered machine ABC that's out in your environment that has the same serial 1234. So 1234 on both sides will match up, and that will happen automatically if you enter the serial number into the purchasing system. In addition, I mentioned we were going to add software. So let's imagine we're buying Office. Well, Office is what we called it, but that's not what's going to get recognized out in the field. So we're going to go select something that exists, Office Professional Plus 2013. And when I add quantity of 1, this is going to be the value that we're going to use for compliance. If I had 100 and I add 1, I have 101. And we'll summarize all the orders that have Microsoft Office Professional Plus 2013 together and use that from a compliance perspective. I can add in a unit price. I can add in a status. I can add notes, custom fields. I can add maintenance here as well, but I'll skip all that for the sake of time. So now I have a third line item. Now, once I've entered this data, and maybe I've walked away from the system, I'm going to come back in a week or a day or maybe tomorrow, and I want to look at my orders. So I can come into the orders panel, and I can see the order that I just entered in today. I can look at orders by purchases, by leases. I can look at leases that are expiring, leases that have buyout notifications. And if I move to line items, what will happen is I'm going to view all the line items. And in this case, there are 3 for the order we just entered, and you can see those listed at the top. But I could view things by hardware. I could look at things, all my hardware maintenance items. I could look at hardware maintenance that's expiring. And then I also, if I want, can do searches. Let's imagine somebody walks up to you and says, when did we buy VMware last? Or show me all the orders associated to VMware. So I can type in VMware, and it's going to show all the orders. It's searching all text columns for the word VMware. But I could search any column. In fact, I could go search the manufacturer column specifically for that manufacturer. But I can search any column, or I can search by currency, by number, dates, that type of value. The Assign tab has a lot of values on the left-hand side. It's a little bit intimidating. There's a lot of different ways to view assignments. Probably the most common way that people want to look at assignments are based on assignments to users or groups. So let's imagine that I want to find all the assets that have ever been assigned to me. I can put in my user account, do a search, and find all those assets. And let's imagine that I want to reassign those to a different user. I can select them and reassign them. So that's one method. But again, you have a variety of different ways you can view assets from an assignment perspective on this panel. The reconcile view is going to show you all the computers that have been reconciled, which means that the serial number listed under serial number column matches both the machine and the order. Under unreconciled, you'll notice there's a long list of computers, and the reason is the serial number is blank. It's never been entered into purchasing, primarily because these are fictitious machines I've entered during demos like this. In a real environment, what will happen is this list will grow and shrink as you receive computers and they get reconciled. Documents tab has to do with managing documents. Preferences tab allows you to be reminded X number of days for when my lease might expire or my maintenance agreements. And you also have the option of sending email notifications to an individual or a group of people that might want to have that information. You can edit the message that is sent to these people and have it say whatever you like. And in addition, when you get this, you'll get a calendar file as well. So, you know, the process might be our purchasing interface notifies you via email that it's due, and you're busy, and you just say, well, I'll just reschedule it in Outlook using the calendar file. So you wouldn't have to come back into purchasing to reschedule it for 5 days out or the end of the week. So that's a nice feature to have. And then the administration tab is where we set up the access profiles. It's also where you set up the email notification addresses and information like that. So that is a very quick summary through the purchasing interface. And if we go back to the status page, the other thing you'll notice is there are also reminders in the interface itself about leases that are expiring and maintenance agreements. There's also an import wizard down in the lower right that walks you through the process of importing data from Excel. The last thing that I want to show you today is related to the ability to deny access to applications. So to do this, I'm opening up the admin console. And we will notice that I'm going to go ahead and use WinZip for my example. And there's a control tab associated with the properties for WinZip. And what this control tab allows me to do is determine what type of profile I want to apply. Now, I can apply concurrently licensed model to this, or if I want, I can set up something new, and I can determine who has access based on authorization. So I can either deny or allow, and I can do that either based on a machine, I could do that based on a machine group, or I can do it based on users. So I don't want any of my contractors to be able to access this application. In my case, I'm going to cancel out because I already have a profile that says the machine demo 2008 should be denied access to WinZip. When I launch WinZip, it will initially come up, but a dialog comes over the top and tells me I'm not authorized to run this. And that message can be changed to whatever you would like it to say. And if I leave this up, it will eventually close it, or if I click OK, the application goes away. We also will track the fact that that person who's not authorized to run it attempted to launch that application, so you have visibility to that as well. So that completes the portion of the demo. What I'd like to do is go ahead and summarize, and then we'll open up for questions. Again, we've been in this industry for a long time. We're exclusively focused on IT asset management. I think I talked, you know, more maybe than most people might about support, but that's very important to us. We believe in maintaining very good relationships with our customers. We also license our technology to some world-class software companies, and that just means that these companies recognize that we are one of the best in the world in software recognition, which is a key component to any software asset management solution that you may look at. Our product's been around for a long time. It integrates inventory usage and purchasing data. It's easy to deploy and use. And we also support virtual and Citrix server environments. We can support published apps and streamed apps, which are something that may be important to you as well. So based on today's presentation, you may want to learn more. You may want to take a look at the product. XpressMetrics provides a proof of concept. We'll guide you through an implementation of our product, and we'll let you do it on a large subset of your machines, say 30%, for a 30-day period. And then during that 30-day period, we'll collect software, hardware inventory, and software usage data. And we'll help you review your compliance risk and potential license savings, and obviously your ROI on the product itself. And the result of this is it will enable you to demonstrate business value of our product, ensure that we fit within your environment from a technology perspective, and give you the tools to allow you to sell your asset management project internally to your organization. So I'd like to go ahead and open it up for questions. If you're interested in a proof of concept, you'll see the contact information up there while we're dealing with questions, both phone number and our website, and also an email link to our sales organization. So let's go ahead and take a look at questions. Looks like I have a couple. There's a question, is software inventory functionality intelligent enough to apply downgrade rights when considering the count of a specific product? So in some cases, we group things in what we call license units, and that license unit basically applies your total license count to anything in that license unit. For that sake, yes. But for your office, for example, we currently do not do that. That is part of the next version that we are releasing later this year or early next year. So that will be in there for your, for example, your office. Will this be available offline as well? I just got the demo and was hoping to hear, not just watch. Yeah, this is available offline as well. I'm not sure why you're unable to hear today, but you should have been able to hear as well. But this will be available. Many manufacturers seem to be shifting their server licensing to core-based models. Does the hardware scan provide you with number of cores in a server? The answer is yes. We do provide number of cores for server. You can collect that with our product. In the next release, though, we're going to do a lot better job of including that type of information from a licensing perspective as well. It looks like those are the only questions that I have today. I'd like to thank all of you for attending our webinar. If you have additional questions, feel free to reach out to our sales or support organization. And again, thank you for your time and have a great day.